So, hello everyone. My name is Danielle Lutman. I use she, her, and hers pronouns. I'm the program manager for gender equity student initiatives at the Eberly Center for Women on the University of Toledo's campus, and we are excited for our continued partnership with the Matriots. Done a couple events with them, and really excited to keep it going, celebrating Women's History Month. So, thank you all for joining us tonight. And admitting folks while introducing is always fun. I have the pleasure tonight of introducing Shiloh, who joined the Matriots as a member in October of 2017 and joined the staff in May of 2019 as a financing and fundraising director. She has over a decade of nonprofit experience, including her previous role as the executive director of the German Village Society and as the marketing/PR director for the Wellington School. Prior to her career in nonprofit and development, Shiloh was a television journalist, most recently serving as a managing editor for KevTV.com?
KETV, yeah.
KETV.com. Shiloh was born and raised in rural Nebraska and holds a master's in broadcast and public policy from American University in Washington, D.C., where she also covered the White House as a journalist for 3 years on CONUS television. So thank you, Shiloh, for agreeing to introduce our panelists and moderate for us tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Danielle, and thank you to the Eberly Center for, as you said, the ongoing partnership, because I want to welcome as partner organizations as well tonight, not only the Eberly Center and University of Toledo, but Ignite and Ready to Run at OSU. Plus, we have a couple of other super experts for our panel. I think the idea when Danielle and I set out to do something for Women's History Month was to inspire students and citizens alike to get active in politics. The Matriots, as you may or may not know, is a political action committee, and we are working in a nonpartisan fashion to endorse and support more women to run for office in Ohio. So we support from township and village level up to, we're very hopeful about 2022 having a governor candidate who is a woman. So stand by for news on the rest of the Matriots events. This year, we will be backing, of course, city council races, mayors, auditors, all of the things, all of the seats that really and truly affect your daily life in a way that, even though the White House, those are sexy races, less likely to affect your life in a day-by-day way, like whether or not the trash gets packed up, right? Like this is where the rubber meets the road, these 2021 races. Okay, so I do have the pleasure of introducing our panel, and I have shortened down your bios just a little bit so that I can share a little bit about each of the four of you. Megan Harrington works for Senator Rob Portman as his primary advisor on judiciary and education issues since 2011. She studied political science at the University of Toledo and is also a graduate of Toledo's College of Law. She's a native of Toledo. So this is a Toledo girl, but now she lives in Washington, D.C. with her husband and young daughter. So later we're going to talk about where you live in D.C. versus where I lived. Let's talk about Lucy Frank. Hello. She was born and raised in Wauseon, Ohio, and lives in Columbus. Has served as a legislative assistant to Columbus City Council member Emmanuel Remy for the past 3 years. Lucy, too, a proud alumna of University of Toledo, married to Ryan. Welcome to the call, Ryan, and the parent of 2 adorable guinea pigs, Sushi and Miso. Tiara Stewart has over 9 years of experience in community organizing, youth development, and nonprofit work. She currently serves as the National Fellowship Program Director with Ignite National, a nonpartisan 501c3 organization that is a movement of young women who are ready and eager to become the next generation of political leaders. And that's why the Matriots loves to partner with Ignite right there. We need the next generation. And Dr. Tina D. Pierce serves as program manager in the John Glenn College of Public Affairs at The Ohio State University, administering professional development programs. She is the founder and CEO of WORTH, which stands for Working Through Obstacles, Reaching True Heights, and the Worth Foundation. Dr. Pierce is also a member of the Columbus Board of Education, and the Matriots PAC was very proud to have endorsed her run in 2019. So welcome to all of you. I just, under that theme of how do we get into politics, I think we should start with why do we get into politics? So I want to hear from each of you. When did you decide to become involved in politics? And how did you what was the path that got you to the current position? And I don't want you to leave out the part where you knocked doors for a city council member while you were at the University of Toledo, right? I'll call on you one at a time. Lucy, do you want to start? How'd you get into politics?
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for having me tonight. I feel like my story is similar to a lot of other folks who grew up in a small town. I myself, I recognize myself as a Democrat, and so where I grew up wasn't so much a lot of that. And so my involvement really started in the University of Toledo and in Toledo. But I did want to mention, because my mother is on the call, she served for 12 years as a school board member for Wauseon Public Schools. So if I'm being very honest about where my roots come from, that is where they are from. And so thanks to my mom for serving for those 12 years and giving me a really nice insight into what that looks like as an adult. But at the University of Toledo, I was in the Jesup Scott Honors College and the Political Science Department. And thankfully, through a partnership with the Honors College and the City of Toledo, I did an internship the summer after my freshman year of college. And it was in Mayor D. Michael Collins's office as mayor. So that was really where my inspiration and my energy started. He was an independent, and I had the opportunity to work there for 3 months over the summer. And then as college went on, got more involved with Paula Hicks Hudson's office, went to the 2016 Democratic National Convention with the Ohio Democratic Party. And then after college, got a job in Paula's office, who is now a state representative. So it's really nice to see her around town when that's possible down here in Columbus. But yeah, so that was really where I got started, and the why piece, and especially the why of I came from a more conservative background, coming into more progressive policies and politics in my own adult life. The why is just, I truly do believe public servitude is the best way to spend my time. And for folks who work in the private sector or don't work in the public sector and volunteer on the outside, that is okay and amazing work, and that's where some of the best work comes from. But I also think that working in a municipal government like Columbus or Toledo as an assistant, as a public refuse worker, those are some of the most respectable jobs that you can find, and they really do contribute to the overall success of the city, of the state, of women. And I'm excited to talk a little bit more later about some of the women in my life that have made a real big impact. But thank you. That's what I'll say for now.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lizzie. And thank you to your mom for serving 12 years. That's a long time to be tracked down at the grocery store with every citizen's ideas and complaints. Megan, will you tell us your journey to politics?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having this forum. I think being able to talk to younger people and just other people who are in this space in general is something that I've really missed during COVID, as we've all been physically absent. And so this is just a great forum. So I was raised in a really non-political family, never talked politics around the dinner table, but something drew me to it. And, probably my earliest memory was watching the Bush v. Clinton debate, back in the early 90s. And those were things that I remember as a child, just captured my attention. And so I did go to the University of Toledo, two-time graduate. And there I was involved in the College Republicans. I also did the City of Toledo internship program when I was in law school and had worked in the prosecutor's office. And when I was at UT Law, and I did go to law school thinking I wanted to be a lawyer. I will put that out there. What I was involved in there was a lot of the domestic violence clinics, and also doing some work with the great work of Celia Williamson at the university on human trafficking. and really looking at the issues that impact vulnerable populations. And so that leads to, I think, the why for me, why I'm involved is really, looking at the issues that impact, people every day, and looking at, I guess I come from it, and I do work for a Republican. I would probably identify somewhere on, the right wing of the spectrum. But I really believe that good public policy is bipartisan. And in fact, it's nonpartisan, and it takes everybody coming to the table. And, when you take away the conversation around dollars and cents, we all want the same things. And so I've worked for Senator Portman. I started off in his mailroom, literally separating the pieces of mail that came in when he was first elected. I didn't move out there with a job. I moved out to Washington with, a couple $1,000s and a 3-month rental that I was taking over, and really took a gamble. That's the other, thing that I hope we touch on, because I think, women in particular, we're so, I think, conditioned to be risk adverse in our careers. And there are so many pressures that are mounting on you, whether it's graduate school or family or children. And I really took a risk then, and it paid off. So I've been really fortunate to work in politics, but as I like to view it for myself, it's really more about public service for me.
Love it, Megan. And I love your message, both about nonpartisanship and about just taking a risk on yourself. It turned out not just to be worth it, but to really be a career path that you're clearly passionate about. So that's great. Yes, let's dig into that. Tiara, will you talk about how you find yourself in politics today?
Yes, that's such a great question. And one, just thank you for having us. I'm excited to be in community and just learn from the other panelists as well. I feel like I have to answer this question a lot, but the message is always the same. I don't feel like I actually chose to work in politics or chose this field. I felt like I was put in a position where I had no choice, because I really just can't stand politics, but I understand the necessity behind getting involved with the process. And really just understanding that I had so many convictions about the way of the world. What I like to say is I was cursed with sight, seeing the socially induced misery that so many around the world are subjected to doesn't really allow for me to only think of my own self and self-achievement. So no matter what I would accomplish or what I would gain, I will never be happy until my people are happy. And if I should find my freedom, it is my duty to also help set my people free. And so for my love for community, for my love for freedom and advancement of humans, is what was written over my heart since my conception. And so I set out to work in education first. I needed to identify the problems, where those, I will say the findings were greater than I thought it would be. But even just growing up in Columbus public schools and then transitioning from Olentangy to Reynoldsburg as a small child, I knew when I was in 1st and 2nd grade and we were just coloring in the classroom and I seen people doing hair and watching television, we weren't actually learning. And then switching from these different communities to where it looked extremely different based off where I was living, I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what that was called. And so when I set out to work in education, I wanted to get a deeper understanding of the problem and really working to address the school to prison pipeline, where I was starting to feel a little discouraged in the work and knowing that I wasn't at the roots of the problem, I was at the results. I knew real change was at the roots equaling systems. And how could I continue my work at systems level? Because I was turned off from politics because of the corruption and didn't see where I could fit into all of that. And I understand we needed people with true integrity and rooted in the true essence of leadership. And then AOC happened and every hair on my body stood up. I knew it was the time to get involved with the process, to cause disruption. And like one of my colleagues say, Rai, she taught me it is time it is time to be okay with being an imposter. That if you feel like an imposter in your work, that means you are not conforming, but there to transform. And so Ignite really aligned with this new calling in my life, and just training young women to run for public offices. I had to pick up the phone, and the next step was just to get them to see that I need to be a part of this team. And then that in fact was a direct order from the universe. And just ultimately, I knew that I couldn't fix every issue about the way of the world on my own. I had to actually shift my lens on leadership from being a person to make the direct impact, to pour it into the people who have this conviction about something in their community or a passion, pouring into them to push them to go and do it. And that will further my reach, not only across the country, but in the world. And so I guess that's why I'm in politics.
Yeah, and I love that you have identified also leaning into discomfort, but in such a different way than Megan, really encouraging us to take risks, right? But you didn't really choose politics, but you chose the work that led you to politics, no matter how uncomfortable that may feel against your identity, right? That's amazing.
Exactly.
All right, Tina, let's hear about your path. How do you end up on the school board and running a training program?
Well, so I guess I'll just continue from what Ms. Stewart was indicating, what led her to her work with Ignite. I come from a working class family who was galvanized by the words of Barbara Jordan as a young person, watching her at the presidential national conventions, being a student in Columbus City Schools, and knowing something was different between the education that I was receiving and the education that my peers were receiving in Dublin, or at the time, a New Albany that was just beginning to kind of take flight because Wexner had moved into that area. So, for me, it was a calling of serving my community, being a voice for my community, leveraging my education, and the fact that I had been given the opportunity to enter into the Ohio State University as a first-generation college student and earn 4 degrees. What do you do with those degrees? How do you advance, again, the freedom of my people? How do I advance opportunities for students that are currently and that will enter into not just Columbus City Schools, but all of our schools in the Central Ohio region, right? And so in that respect, one could say that very early on, I knew that I wanted to advocate and to be a voice for the various communities that I am a member of. Very early on, I had the opportunity to be mentored by great teachers in our Columbus City Schools that challenged me to grow in my leadership abilities. One thing that I often laugh about is, as a junior, I think I got into quite a heated discussion with my history teacher because she told me I was going to end up being a teacher. And at that time, I just knew in my spirit and my soul I would end up in the White House as, this first African-American female president. And she kept saying, no, Tina, you're going to be in education. You're going to be a teacher. And so, the path, I would say, that led me to be an advocate for the community, for me to be an educator, and for me to be a servant leader was really around ensuring that there's equitable opportunities for all people, again, that are not just in the particular boundaries that I represent, but again, also connected to the communities that I represent. So we'll say motherhood happened then. So I, went to OSU, earned these 4 degrees, and in the time that I was earning 4 degrees, had 4 beautiful children. So that's another running joke with me. I have the same amount of degrees as children. And so in that time, really focused on ensuring that my children were given the opportunity to, go to schools where they were challenged, where, they had opportunities for experiential learning, but where they also were given the truth, right? So my children also come from a Native American background. And so understanding that even in curriculum, my kids were the kids that were in the classroom saying, Thanksgiving really didn't happen like that. Like, you understand what this holiday is for me, right? And so as a parent, I was kind of that parent, active and engaged, helping with all these community groups and helping with student groups. And, then some parents came to me and said, Tina, you're in education, you're at Ohio State, you're very well known in the community. Why don't you run for school board? And it's quite interesting because I teach political science. And one of the things that we teach is that it takes a person being asked 3 times to run for office. And it actually took me 3 times as well. At first, it was one individual who came and made the invitation. And I said, no. And then that individual got somebody else to help her. And I said again, no. And then they said, okay, well, we're going to go out to eat at the wine bistro. And we like to say that I think the wine gave them additional courage to just not let me out of that place until I said yes. And so on upon that third request, I said yes, quit my job at OSU. I was assistant director for our Young Scholars program, quit the job and decided to run. And in that first race, lost by 2 percentage points, but was determined to continue to run, to again serve my community, to advance the conversations that we needed to have around equity. And now that I'm back at Ohio State and have the great opportunity to be responsible for our power initiative. So from Ready to Run to new leadership, I have the great opportunity every day to think about how I can expand the programs that we offer to empower not just women, but individuals to run for office throughout the state of Ohio, and how we can invite individuals that represent the great diversity that we have within our state. So it's not just a conversation around race or around ethnicity. It's also a conversation around sexual orientation and gender expression, and around class, and all of these great characteristics that we embody as individuals, inviting people as their total self to the table and empowering them to run.
Yeah. I hear several threads there that I want to pick back up toward the end, especially as it relates to women lifting other women up and women investing in themselves. But let's come back to that. I want to pull out of you a little bit of tactical advice. If you're starting to feel inspired, you've heard your stories, you understand now a little bit about your why. I want to talk about how to get active a little bit in each of the programs and people that you represent. And Danielle, I know we want to make this an interactive conversation. So how would you like people to participate if they have a question or something they would like to interject? Do you want them to come off mute, or do you want to use the chat box?
Whichever is easier for you. So, I usually go towards the chat box, but if you're comfortable with folks unmuting, I'm fine with that. So
let's do this. Let's use the chat box. If you're shy, you can type your question out and I'll read it. And if you are not shy and want to say it yourself, then just say, I'd like to come off mute, and I'll call on you so we don't step on each other. How about that? So anytime, let us know that you've got questions. I'm going to go in reverse order now. Tina, let's think, I want to put these women on the call tonight to work if they want, right? Are there ways, what are the best ways in your school board role for people to engage? Is it go to meetings and advocate? Are there volunteer roles? Is there something that citizens can do and students can do if they want to start to get closer to the work through those auspices?
Definitely. So one, if you're a student, I advocate that student voice is critically important and key in all the work that we do as a district. And so for me, having student voice at the table is extremely important. So ensuring that students are members of our board committees. We have several board committees, one of which is the academic committee, which I'm over. I also serve on our policy review committee. That committee is responsible for reviewing, initiating, and really implementing all the policies throughout the district. So again, ensuring that students have space and a place on those committees. Parents and community members can also be active and engaged in those board committees. Through those board committees, you'll start to understand how the board functions. You'll understand how the district functions. You'll come to get an intimate understanding of the budget as it relates to the district, but also the budget as it relates to the state of Ohio, right? We are one particular educational institution within the state, and there are, from public to private to parochial to charter. So you begin to understand how education is funded throughout the state of Ohio. So I definitely encourage students, community members, parents alike to join those board committees. But I understand, you just can't jump in and say, okay, I want to run for school board, or I want to run and I want to serve on this particular board committee, because we know that real mobilization and organization happens at the grassroots level, right? And so in the neighborhood, in the particular school building, we want to engage people. So we want to engage students and community members and parents in the PTAs and the PTSOs. We want to ensure that they're engaged in the site-based councils that are making decisions that relate to that particular school building. We want to ensure that if there's an area commission or a neighborhood organization, that you're serving on those as well and being an advocate for education, being an advocate for your school, being an advocate for your district. That's key and important, because the more confidence you build, right, the more empowered, the more you will walk into a space and know you belong in that space because you've put in the work, the sweat equity to understand the issues that are important. You know your community, you know who you represent. And so you can walk into those spaces very confidently and say, I'm here to serve my community and I understand what my community needs. So those are definite first steps for getting engaged and getting involved.
Feels like a great empowered point of view to come to the table as a volunteer, right? Like, we're really valuing what you represent about our community. So I think that's a lesson for me, is to come in not just saying like, can I stuff postcards for you, right? But I really want to be a voice. That's amazing. Tiara, I think a lot of your audience is college students, right? So can you first kind of give us the elevator speech about what Ignite is, and then tell us how to get involved and engaged and make the best use of Ignite as a first step?
Yes, and I loved everything that Dr. Pierce just said to totality. And so I'm not gonna repeat things that she already said, but I'm gonna speak to another thing that you need to be prepared to do before you enter into the space. But before I get into that, Ignite, we are a movement of young women who are ready and eager to be the next political leaders of this country. And political leaders can be anything from Board of Education, like Dr. Pierce, or just an activist, community organizer, campaign operative. So there's just so many different ways, or legislative aid. There's just so many different ways to serve within the political arena. And so Ignite has so many different programs, and not even just at the collegiate level, post-grad. And we're working on this huge project to take us to scale that will encompass K through 12 as well. But before you even, if you're not engaged in politics and you're trying to figure out how to engage civically or politically, before you do any of that, you need to just figure out what is that why. And I'll always start with this with our fellows. It's like, clearly define that why. And that why is that thing that's going to get you up in the morning when your body physically don't want to move, because you're going to get tired in this journey. So what is going to be that thing that drives you when your body physically don't want to get out of bed? And after you define that why, the next step is to define the impact that you want to have, whatever your work in the world, as a result of your existence in this world. What does impact look like for you? And then you're going to take those two things and you're going to create your own personal life mission statement. And this is going to be the compass of your journey in leadership. And so before you apply for a job, before you decide to run, you want to make sure there is an alignment with whatever you do with your mission statement, or you're going to get about the business of having the world and others around you define it for you. And so before you can even decide what those next steps, you got to be clear about self, because if not, people are going to define self for you. So start there. And we have an amazing program that I just created this curriculum with our career planning series. And the first workshop we had was determine or define your mission in life, which was everything that I just went through. And I think we're gonna rehost that sometime in the fall. But after that, after you have defined all of that, the best next steps, especially if you're just getting involved and trying to get civically engaged, is just go into your search engine and type in boards and commissions in your local community. And what you're going to see is all these appointed seats that you can potentially serve on without even running for office. And so what you're going to do is take that mission statement that I just talked about, and you're going to find the board or commission that aligns with that mission statement. And then you're going to apply. And it can be a very simple application process. It just depends on where you are and what county. It can be as simple as just submitting your resume and a cover letter, or doing a quick application, but you won't have to run for a lot of these different boards and commissions. And then I just want to talk about one last piece of advice when it comes to political engagement or just navigating the political arena. The journey in leadership is very hard and isolated. especially if you're coming in without the intentions to conform to the environment. And so what I like to say is we all been given two hands. One hand is to battle and one hand is to build. So you need to be prepared to figure out what are the gaps in this system that needs to be disrupted, and how am I going to add value to the space, because it's very unproductive to just be shaking tables with no solution. So be clear on that, and don't look to fit in and be like. That is not what we came here to do. We came here to impact change, and change can be very uncomfortable for a lot of people, and it could be uncomfortable for the person who's trying to impact change. And so respect, yes, but not to be liked and to fit in. And then the last thing you're going to really need is to develop your sister circle or your circle, period. And these are going to be people, because when it comes to greatness, sometimes you can't see your own greatness, and so the people around you will act as a mirror and reflection of that greatness. And you have the wrong people around you, they could demoralize you, they can make you feel incompetent or inadequate or unable to take that stand. And so you want to be very intentional about the people you surround yourself with, and that's going to keep you lifted up, especially as you continue to enter into these spaces that weren't necessarily created for you. And with that being said, make self a priority. We are not machines. I think as somebody who ascended from enslaved humans, we have been taught and perpetuate this slave mentality to work, 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 work. And then that shortens my life expectancy. So I have to pour into myself, and my community will get the overflow. And so I cannot be a source unless I take care of I can't be a resource unless I take care of the source. So take care of the source, make self a priority, and by pouring into yourself, your community will get the overflow. And that is the best advice that I can give within this time that I've been given.
It's exactly right. It is, in addition to taking care of self for you, in order to go into those battles and understand that you're not going to be liked at the end of all those battles, right? You've really got to take care of number one. Yeah, I appreciate that advice. And I think too, that you pointed out yet another thing that the American culture sort of tells women that we need to do, right? And that is be liked. So you've got to get comfortable with maybe not being liked if you're going to be in this space. Yeah, it's important work. Megan, you are working in Washington, D.C. for a federal senator, and I want to know if I am a constituent, a voter, if I have the desire to really connect and volunteer. That can feel very daunting, right? How do I engage at the federal level, and what are some effective ways even to be in communication in a way that really helps out for Senator Portman?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, with any elected official at the federal level, there are really two sides. You've got the political side, and then you've got the people who are doing the job. And so for me, as an employee of Rob Portman, but working for the United States Senate, I don't have any involvement in politics, fundraisers, any of that. In fact, it's illegal for me to even, try to take part in it. So I don't. I love that distinction because it really helps you stay in your path and to be clear-headed about, what your role is in that office. And when those lines are blurred, that's where you get into problems. So I'll say on the political side, when you and I certainly have volunteered before this job for many campaigns, and I think it's a really exciting thing. If you haven't worked on a campaign or volunteered, do it. The first thing is, love the candidate who you're volunteering for. There is nothing better than pushing for someone you believe in, who is pushing for policies that you're 100% behind, and it's just a great, worthwhile experience. On the policy side, I think in a pre-COVID world, and hopefully we'll get back to that. But, the thing that I enjoyed about my job really was just seeing Ohioans all the time in Washington and people coming in and, it's not, sometimes they're pushing for federal policies. Like, I can have the YMCA of Greater Toledo coming in and they're pushing for, top line federal budget issues, but they're also telling me about the work they're doing in their community. And that's what Senator Portman wants to hear. He wants to hear about the initiatives that they're doing to prevent diabetes, to prevent childhood poverty, to fill these voids. And then what we can do on a federal side is be shine a light on that and use that as a platform for making an argument for federal funding for X, Y, and Z. But I will say, so advocacy, absolutely, if you have a chance to go to DC and lobby the staff, member meetings are important. Sure. It's always great to and I encourage people, if you see a member of Congress or a senator, track them down. What are they going to do? Be rude to you? No. Get your questions asked. But at the same time, I think relationships with the staff, people don't really realize how accessible we all are. And I have just people everywhere across the state, just regular people who are interested in just random kind of things all over the board, and they'll email me, and if I know something, I'll email back, and we keep a dialogue going. And so I think that's really important. So don't underestimate the relationships that you have with staff, whether it's on any level of government, because we're there, and that's our full-time job. And then the last thing is on a level of you want to get the attention of a member of Congress really quickly. This is my secret. You write into your local paper and you write a letter to the editor and you call them out. Every member of Congress every morning gets press clips of all of their name mentions. And that might be that's the first thing they read in the morning. And that is the quickest way. I'm just telling you, it's the best known secret. And who would have thought? But, it's something that absolutely gets to the member level. It'll go down to staff. Your voice will be heard. So don't underestimate good old, journalistic tactics of letters to the editor.
I love that so much. It's such a great peek behind the curtain at what really rises to the top and how you can be effective in other ways. And I think you're spot on, where if you love the politics side, you can do so much volunteering on a campaign, right? Even in COVID, right? There are still ways. It's not door knocking as much anymore, but lots of other creative ways to be part of that. Lucy, you're working at the city council level, of course. I would love to hear how best to be active with you, with the staff, with your council member, if there are ways to volunteer. But here's what I'm sort of hoping that you have a great story on. Is there one creative constituent outreach that always has the office buzzing? You always go back and tell that story about, remember when so-and-so got our attention in this way?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. And just to reiterate what Megan and Tiara and Dr. Pierce have said, all of this is amazing advice. I'm writing down some things as well. So for everyone here, this is a really lucky opportunity. And I'm thankful to be here with these wonderful women, including yourself, Shiloh. So the first part would be, so Columbus City Council, let's take a really quick deep dive on what that is. So we've got the federal level, we've got state level, we've got county level, and then we've got city level. City of Columbus is the largest city in the state of Ohio. We're also the capital, where we have the state house. So the city of Columbus City Hall and Ohio State House are just a block away. So it's a really interesting thing to be in Columbus, working downtown, when you have access to all of these things. You literally hear protests, different types of things that are happening outside of the State House doors at City Hall and vice versa. So very powerful. And so we bring up the question of how to be engaged with our office. Of course, if you want to have a question answered, if you want to schedule something, I am the legislative assistant for my council member. The calendar is my responsibility. So when folks reach out, I'm the one that has that conversation. Sometimes if the conversation can be had without going directly to a council member, we do that. In Columbus City Council members are technically part-time workers. Same thing in the city of Toledo. They are technically part-time, whereas the mayor is a full-time position. So that can lead to some scheduling conflicts. And the other thing, Megan said this too, is a lot of the time the staff is working on some of these issues or working on the policy or connecting the dots in the community. And I definitely think that if folks really, really want to get the conversation started, coming to us can be really helpful to get that going. So I guess for me, a march is a very interesting tool to use. So it's not a protest. You're not standing in one place. You are marching. And if I remember correctly, I think it was 2019. I think it, and Dr. Pierce, you might remember this too. I think it was the Columbus Association, or they all were all wearing red t-shirts. Everyone, all the teachers that were there, it was the union. So they were all there wearing their red t-shirts. They brought their families, they brought their children, they were pushing kids in strollers, and they just marched around City Hall. I mean, there was a few hundred, yes, CEA, thank you. There were hundreds of them. And you know, that was a very political thing. We're talking about public office. We're also talking about politics, and they do go together. Thankfully, in my position, I can still be politically active. I'm the president of the Franklin County Young Democrats. I'm at the state level as well. I'm involved in the county party structure. But we also have those rules, and so that in particular, that march stands out in my mind because we were just, I think it was like a Friday. We were just sitting in the office working. Most council members are in on a Friday, and all of a sudden, you know, you hear the music, you hear some of the other stuff, and that was a really powerful way to do it. Another powerful way is just to call. Some people aren't willing to just call. And if you just call me or my coworker Jeff, and get on the phone with us, and we usually spend 30 minutes on the phone with the constituent, easy, and that can really get our attention too. And I will say, if people were to ask my advice on how to best do that, I think trying in a positive way first is very successful. If you offend someone, if you get off on the wrong foot, usually you're not going to have a good conversation to start with. I think that is kind of a similar thing when it comes to political offices and service. If you call me and ask me the question and I ignore you, that's one thing. But if you've never even asked me the question, that's another thing. So just thought I'd throw that in there for some contrast. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the kind of the kindness quotient that you offered us as well, right? It does pay to not treat this all in the way that some pieces of politics have become, right? Which is just like lots of vitriol and no kindness. Maybe start out with, hey, Lucy, I had an idea and I wanted to share it with you. I think I have a better idea for how this could work for our city, right?
Exactly. And we love to have those conversations, and really, truly some of the best policy we've ever done has come from great conversations like that.
That's great. So we started here on how to be an advocate, how to be a volunteer, how to kind of engage as a community member and maybe get your toe in the water. I want to turn my attention for the next couple questions to Tiara and Tina, who are running formal training programs, right? So Tiara, I'll start with you. What's the benefit if I'm a student thinking about being an advocate or working in public office in some form or fashion? What's the benefit of a formal training program as opposed to kind of just figuring it out?
That is such a great question. And I think the greatest benefit is honestly the support, the network of support that you're going to receive. I mean, there's so many free resources out there that you can equip yourself in a journey. When you're identifying, like, I have an issue about something, but I don't know what to do. I haven't been trained to think about politics or what policy is, what is that, what is legislative advocacy, all these different things. So that is the most intimidating part, especially for when we think about leadership, how we've been socialized to think who are leaders and what a leader looks, sound, and feel like. So the biggest thing is, one, the network of support you're going to receive. And then the next thing is really the tools that's going to equip you with the journey. The only thing that we ask of you is, well, the only thing that you really need to be a leader is the conviction, the love for your people, be willing to serve and protect. And then we can help you with providing the training and tools to get you where you're trying to go. And not only that, just the network of support. And going back to what I was saying earlier about that sister circle, it can be really lonely in a journey of leadership. And we all know politics can get really grimy. And so that alone can turn people away. But when you have when you get into the room where the people are and where they're there to support you. And we can provide a step-by-step process. Here's step one, here's step two. This is what you need to do to get your campaign off the ground. Okay, here's the team that you need. Here's how you execute the role. And at the center of this is more, it's less about your voice, it's more about amplifying the voices of your community. So you don't need to be an expert in all this. What you need to be an expert at is listening to your constituents. And so I think the most intimidating part of this is thinking that I need to be an expert in all these different things. I don't have support, I don't have resources. And so if we can eliminate all of those things, then what's the excuse? So then that is the biggest benefit, receiving all those different things.
Yeah, and I think my phone was ringing off the hook in January as women across the state were starting to think about running for office at some point in this calendar year and realized they have the passion, but they don't know the mechanics, right? Hey, Shiloh, do I start by putting my name on the ballot, or I have to have signatures, or how does that work? Could you please show me or connect me to somebody who's done it? So I think it's invaluable to have some of those hurdles removed, or just kind of one resource that you can turn to. Mm-hmm. Patricia, I see that we have a raised hand. This is not shy. Patricia is going to come off mute and ask her question. Please do.
Well, I just wanted to say that I'm probably a little older than you ladies, but I was there when the Catherine Eberly Center for Women was organized, and it was in University Hall. This was back in the early 70s, maybe. I'm forgetting what year it was, but let's see. I retired from Chrysler 20 years ago. I'll be 73 this month. And I belong to the Anthony Wayne Area Democratic Club. And we are also looking for young Dems. I heard somebody say, the lady say she was a member of the Young Dems. So I can't see very well, but I guess it's Judy. No, wait, I can't read it. Frank.
I think it was Lucy. Yeah. Yep.
Lucy, I'm sorry. It's the image reduced it too much for me. But anyways, when Hillary was running for office, we had a meeting out in Sylvania, and they introduced us to the Young Dems. Well, our group out here now in Waterville is looking for ways to attract younger people into our club, is what I'm trying to say. It's really, our meetings are really Zooming. And this was before Zoom started. We started out with a handful, but actually 20 years ago, we had a small group out here and it kind of vanished. What happened? Now we fill one of the biggest rooms that they have here at the library when we do have meetings, and then we're Zooming right now every month.
Fantastic.
So,
I think
I
you
got
may
it,
know
yeah.
my friend and fellow Anthony Wayne Democrat, Andy Riley. Is that right? I think it's a great opportunity.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's a great way for people to get involved if they are interested in democratic politics. I'm really glad that you shared that. And if you could type your phone number or however you'd like people to contact you about that opportunity into the chat, then I think you could maybe connect with
Do that. Yeah.
Right? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Tina, let's talk about, you've got a number of programs, so maybe you have to kind of help define, give us that elevator speech about the different training programs that you got, and then I'll ask a question.
Well, I'll kind of pick up where our two just left off. And, in addition to that network of support, really the training programs help to sustain the efforts of individuals that are supportive of women running for office, right? The trainings keep us focused on the fact that there's still work yet to be done, because far too often when elections happen, we get this good feeling, we say we've achieved what we needed to achieve, and then we step away. And the trainings It's important that we have them because it keeps us focused on the fact that there's future generations coming behind us. There's still work yet to be done. There's policies that still need to be enacted. So training is important because it helps to sustain the growth that we need to see in women moving into office, but also those cross-cultural issues that we need to address as a community, right? So we can talk about the political divide that we see, how suburban women are voting in comparison to urban women. But at the end of the day, we need to start addressing the issues that affect women, right? When we talk about wage inequalities, when we talk about food insecurities, when we talk about housing affordability in our communities, when we talk about failing educational systems, right? These are issues that are critically important to women, right? To the communities that women live in. And so as a result of that, again, those trainings help to move us towards keeping those issues at the center, ensuring that women are well versed in whatever value system they may come at those issues with. So whatever they may feel related to those issues, they learn how to articulate their feelings. They learn how to articulate their ideas. And so those trainings are key and very important in sustaining that much needed advocacy to increase the number of women that are running for office and the issues that we're tackling. And so at The Ohio State University, we have several initiatives. One, we have Ready to Run. Ready to Run is for women from all walks of life. We're even encouraging students to take part in that training. And we've done something unique. In the past, that training has been focused on preparing women to run for office. As I came into this role, I said, well, you know, women are dealing with wage inequities, right? And so you can prepare us to run for office, but we also need to be connected to men because they have the financial resources, that extra money that they can give and donate to our campaigns. So we also need to have them in the room with us so they understand why certain issues are important to us, so they understand the expertise and the skill set that women can bring to the table when we're given our much well-deserved opportunity to sit at the table to be able to craft policies and practices to address those issues, right? And so what we've done has been very intentional with Ready to Run to say, you know what, it's about preparing women to run for office, but we welcome all, right? Also in that respect, what we began to, or what I probably pointed out, is that we were missing the diversity of women, right? We were missing our transgender community. We were missing a Black woman who were coming to that. We were missing ethnic and cultural minorities. So our Bhutanese, our Somali women, you know, we have to open that program up. And so with that Ready to Run program, we welcome all. Again, we want to empower people to run for office. And that includes, as my sister, Ms. Stewart said, connecting them to people that will help to support them, people that will encourage them, people that will help to, again, you know, help them persevere when they feel like, man, this is really thankless work, and I'm pretty tired with it. So we have that Ready to Run program for that. That program really deals with those technical aspects of, you know, running for office. So, you know, what should your headshot look like? Should, you know, if you're an African-American female, should your hair be straight? Should it be braided? You know, should it be an afro or not, right? So we deal with those technical skills related to, you know, what should be your campaign platform. But we also deal with those soft skills, right? You know, how do you need to talk to the community? You know, how do you make yourself relatable? You know, how do you reach out and show empathy when you're also campaigning? So that has become very important as a part of our curriculum, helping to ensure that we're not just helping with those mechanical and technical skills, but also providing a space for individuals to be able to improve their soft skills. They're feeling comfortable with speaking with people, feeling comfortable with articulating what their values are and what their issue, what their stance on issues are. In addition to Ready to Run, we also have our new Leadership Ohio program. And that program focuses on our college students, right? Our juniors and seniors who are interested, again, in the political space. And that could be running for office, that could be serving as a legislative aide, a variety of different positions. And so with that program, that's a 5-day residential program at The Ohio State University. It's open to college students that one reside in the state of Ohio. So even if you go to a school outside of the state of Ohio, we want you to come back to our New Leadership Ohio program, because that program is very specific around the politics of Ohio. So you're going to learn how our Ohio State House operates. You're going to learn how our Ohio judicial system operates. We're going to connect you to appointed and elected officials in Ohio that are serving. So once you graduate, and once you figure out if you want to run for office or if you want to work for a particular agency or individual, you have those connections within your home state to do that, right? That's our next program. We also have Women of Power. Women of Power is a commission. Well, our Power Commission is a commission that raises money for all of our initiatives, one being our Ready to Run, our new leadership program. And what we're trying to do here in the next couple of years is to diversify that commission. We want to put more young voices on that commission. We want to put, individuals that represent the broad spectrum, again, of all the diversity that we have in our community. When we talk about individuals who need to be seated at the table, that also includes people with different ability levels, right? So I want individuals who might have, physical, different levels of ability related to their physical aspects, individuals who are representing our veteran military population. We want to make sure that we're giving opportunities for the diversity of people to sit at the table. And one of the key places to start that is through our commission, because we know if somebody's searching through our OSU website and they decided I run for office, they want to see somebody who looks like them that has participated in one of these programs, or somebody that looks like them that is over one of these programs. And so we're very focused on making sure that our commission is very diverse and represents the broad spectrum of diversity that we have throughout the state of Ohio. What we're also looking to do this year is to take the show on the road, right? To this point, a lot of our training programs have happened on main campus, have happened during the week. And so we have to understand that that's a very privileged perspective, right? One is privileged because how many people can leave from Cleveland to come down to main campus for these trainings that happen during the week when they're work hours, right? You're going to get women who are lawyers or who work for a law firm whose law firm is sponsoring them to come. But we want to expand that net. So what we're going to do is we're going to start taking our Ready to Run and having it at our branch campuses and offering more programs via Zoom, via virtual platforms. So we're equipping women throughout the state of Ohio to run for office, to have that opportunity to be with like-minded people, and to, again, learn those technical as well as soft skills that will empower them to run for office. So we're super excited about that.
That's a really powerful not just observation, right? Like, we got to go to them if we really want the diversity of people to be empowered to run for office, but then that costs money. So you can't just identify it, right? You've got to put together like a roadshow budget. So I applaud that effort. I'm just curious, because I think this relates both to those on the call, like Melissa, who just identified herself as a potential candidate, which is amazing, and those who want to volunteer. How the advice changed in your training program once we got to COVID, right? You probably did a little less training on door knocking and a little more training on what? How did that change?
It went from door knocking to what young people already know, and that's how to make a social media campaign. Social media. How to use social media to really build your constituency base, right? So understanding that you have a particular population that Facebook is their social media go-to, and that tends to be, our baby boomer generation. If I go to my 11 and 14-year-olds and tell them, hey, what do you think about this Facebook post? No, mom, what you doing on Instagram? Matter of fact, what you doing on TikTok? And it took you too long to get this paragraph out. I need you to just hit this dance real quick, so people can see, okay, she's cool, she's down for young people, right? So you have to understand how to be able to use the various social media platforms to galvanize the people who have your shared value system, who are also concerned about the issues that you're concerned with. So helping people understand how to build out their LinkedIn pages, how to build out those Facebook pages, and understanding that you just don't want to focus on one, because if you do focus on one social media platform, you're going to miss so many other people who would connect to what you have to say, who would support you. So we want to make sure that we really help people understand all those platforms that are out there to help them with their campaigning.
Yeah, perfect. That makes sense. You pretty much have to dance if you're going to TikTok, right? Otherwise you get no votes. All right, you guys have made this an amazing conversation infused throughout with women lifting up women. So I want to come back to that. I have a prepared question just to sort of get things rolling, but I don't want to box you in by just answering my question, right? I know that you all have different ways that you invest in yourself and that you invest in other women. So I'm going to tee up my question. I'm going to call on Tiara first this time, and then I'll call on each of you in turn. But I'll share that the Matriots PAC believes that when women lead, Ohio prospers. That's why we're investing in women's campaigns. And we all know that COVID-related economic fallout has fallen overwhelmingly on women's shoulders for many of the reasons that you have highlighted. I'll add early childhood education as someone who has that as close to my heart. So have you noticed, particularly in the last 12 months, that women, whether elected, appointed, staff, the kinds of advocates that you see in your offices, are they stepping up in ways that distinguish them? Tiara, will you get us started?
Yes, thank you. And I just want to add one more thing onto what Dr. Tina was talking about, and how to galvanize the community in a virtual reality is really understanding the power of individual connection. And one of the biggest tips that I've been giving our women is host Zoom couch parties. And so basically what you would do is that individual connection, you'd be like, invite some of your friends to this Zoom hangout, have that conversation. And before you leave that conversation, have some of those women or people sign up for another Zoom couch party with some of their friends. And then it just keeps going like that. And so just meeting people in the room, even if it's just virtually. And then to the question that you just asked, I feel like, and I love the saying that you were saying, when women lead, Ohio prospers, because I always share this African proverb that says, when women lead, streams run uphill. And so that in any disaster, what we do, we don't ask questions, we just get straight to work. And so what we have seen in our country, really in our world, is what honestly happens when disaster meets poor leadership. And we are seeing the aftermath of all of that right now. And so I don't think that we have time to really think about what are the next steps outside of just getting involved with the process. And so not only are we showing up, and not only are more women deciding, like, we can't continue to allow these people lead us. We got to be the leaders, but we're still supporting our families. We're still making sure our children are learning and they know how to access the Zoom room in order to continue on in their education. And now making sure that they have their breakfast, lunch, all meals of the day that they might have gotten at school, doing all these different things. Because I'm a new mom too. And my partner, James, he and I actually take equal care of our daughter, but it is extremely hard, but we still have no choice but to show up. And I think women really exemplifies what it means in a disaster to really just show up as we do time after time. But more importantly, we see the urgency now for 360-degree perspective. I like to say women have a 360-degree. Not only can we birth the baby, we got to do everything afterwards, and we can still show up to work, we can still pay the bills, we can do all of this. And so when it comes to being in those power making seats, we are daring to run, and we are winning, and we are daring to be loud and holding people accountable. And so we're not taking your word for it anymore. We're saying, move over, I can do this myself. Because like our mamas taught us, if you want something done right, you better do it yourself. And so we need not only great leadership, we realize we're going to have to do it ourselves. And I think if anything, what's going on in our country right now has put even a further fire that was lit in 2016. It just added fuel to that fire.
Yeah. So I'm going to have Lucy pick up on that idea that what our mothers taught us, right? Lucy, tell a story about how you've been inspired by other women and what you've noticed in particular about women distinguishing themselves during this time.
Yeah, so thank you for that question. Two things came to mind. The first one I'll share is Columbus City Council, we have a staff of like 40-ish people, not including the council members. So we still have a really robust team of folks who we've not seen in the same room for a year now. And I know I'm speaking truth to a lot of people's existence right now. And for those who are working in the office, you know, I'm thankful that I'm working in a position that I could work from home. And I know that everyone was not able to do that. In my own workspace, the women at council are the ones who, someone's family gets sick with COVID, usually one of us are the first people to reach out and say, how can we help you? How can we support you? One of my colleagues broke his ankle a few weeks ago. His wife and he and his wife are about to have a baby like in the next few days. And so when that happened, myself and a few other ladies, we were like, okay, what can we possibly do to help you in this situation? You're already working from home. You know, you're going to have this child coming. How can we help you? And so we had that conversation. We got something in place for folks to be able to donate or to help in that way. And so I don't know that we would have done that necessarily in that way if we were all in person, but we went ahead and did it, even though we still feel not divided, but we just don't feel like we're a full team right now. So that's a really important thing that I think folks can take for granted for women in the workplace, even at a progressive office like Columbus City Council. We have to invest in our women. And then the second part I wanted to mention was Dr. Mashika Roberts, who is leading Columbus Public Health during COVID. She's a phenomenal person, is leading in such a difficult time. And she and her team have stepped up. And thankfully, working at council, we get regular briefings. And I can't say enough good things about her and her team. And so when you ask that question, that's what really resonated with me is, wow, women are leading. Women are leading well. And I guarantee it would not be as good if she were not in that position. So.
Yeah, I think that she has shown Central Ohio a real strength, tenaciousness, a real purpose, and I think most of all, compassion for what the city and the region is going through. She's a great example. Yeah, thank you for calling that out. Megan, tell me what you've been observing. Share a story about how women are lifting each other up. And I would love it if you cared to return to the theme of investing in yourself as well. I think that was a really powerful statement you made off the top.
Yeah, well, I think, I hope that we come out of this whole COVID experience better, but I have real concerns just in the people who I talk with and moms and people in the workforce. And we're going to have ground that we have to make up after this. And I just think that's the reality. And women, unfortunately, we've had to do really impossible jobs because it's been, thrown at us. I will say, I think there are some positives out of this. And from a public policy perspective, there are issues where we have now made progress where, but for COVID, we probably would not have. And I think those issues, I'm not saying that they're solved, but they have been raised to a forefront that now we are making steps forward. And one of those, I think, to point to is the recognition that we need a better infrastructure for childcare for women. I am a mother of a toddler. My husband and I both work full time. Before COVID, we were able to afford childcare. It was still hard to find. It was still waiting list after waiting list, still changing schedules. And we were the lucky ones. Now one of the things that I think we're really excited about is we just saw a $40 billion investment in early childhood care from the federal level. we didn't have a funding stream for childcare as a whole. We had, funding for block grants, for childcare development block grants, but we didn't have anything for the infrastructure. So I guess what I'm hoping to take away out of this is, that women have really been, we stood up and people are seeing the impact. And yes, with the ground that we're going to have to make up, which I think is going to be huge, I think that we have been able to at least push these issues that were on the peripheral for so long into the forefront. And I think that also women coming out of this, and I hope it's true of myself, will do a better job of stepping forward and saying what we need. And whether that's workplace flexibility, or whether that's an increase in, salary, or any kind of thing that you might experience in the workplace. And unfortunately, for most of us, you have to ask for it. It's just kind of the structure that exists. And that's not a partisan thing, and it's not a political thing, but it's a consideration. So I've been inspired by the women who were sitting at the table complaining about this stuff before COVID. And I hope that with COVID, we, will come out of this at least having a full recognition of the barriers that still exist.
Yeah, I appreciate your kind of looking at the glass half full, because really these 12 months have laid bare a lot of what we've kind of been able to sweep under the carpet in easier and more economic boom times. And I really think this is a huge opportunity for all these women who have raised their hand to come into office and to serve in other ways, right? To actually step in, lean in, and make those changes. Yeah, I'm very hopeful with you. Tina, you have shared with us several times about all the ways that you build cohorts. So I know that you have women around you governing through this. Tell us what you notice.
Well, first off, I noticed that our young people are continuing to mobilize. This is key and important because, when we look at environmental insurgency that we see, young people, the climate is critically important. How we're taking care of our environment is very important. And so our young people are continuing to build momentum around that issue, to build momentum around racial injustice, and making sure that we're dealing with this, prison pipeline that has been created in a number of, our urban areas and our urban cities. They're starting to see the complexity, the systems of oppression that are happening. And so young people are becoming more fierce in their determination to understand the issues that are going on and to make sure that their voices are heard. And so that's translating then into them creating organizations, to registering people to vote, to them coming to institutions to get degrees, to them starting to understand and analyze how they can build generational and economic independence and wealth. And so that's what I'm starting to observe with our young people. I see my mentees now. Before I would say, do you guys want to come to Ready to Run? They would say, am I too young? I have to wait and go to new leadership. Now those freshmen, those sophomores are coming to me and saying, hey, Dr. Pierce, can I come to Ready to Run? Can I attend it a couple of years? Because every year I think I'm going to learn something new or learn something different. My male mentees are also coming and saying, hey, there's nothing like this on campus for us. Can we come to Ready to Run too? And so those young people understand that we need to build up our toolkit. So once we have the opportunity to run and lead, we can do that, right? We're here and we need to be heard. And so the momentum that young people are continuing to build around issues that are important for us, they're building a better future today. They're putting the work in today. When I think about our Ignite and what they're doing on our campus, again, they're putting that work in. And so that's one of the things that I'm starting to see, is that young people are continuing to use their voice, continuing to advocate, and continuing to show activism around issues that are important for them. The second thing that we're noticing is that more people are coming to training. So in the past, our Ready to Run, we averaged upward to 50 to 60 participants. This year, we had more than 245 participants come to Ready to Run. And this was virtual. This was a whole day on a Saturday where women, stay for 6 hours and we're in all of these sessions and meeting one another and learning this information. And you know what, when we got done, they said, when's the next one? When's the next opportunity, right? We also saw that increased participation for our Women of Power event, and that's our main fundraising event that we use to raise money for Ready to Run for new leadership. We're expecting the same thing to happen with our new leadership program. Normally we have cohorts of about 30 students. We want upwards to 60 students. We want to double that. It's my goal not to turn any student away, because we know that we'll be 100% virtual. We're going to have the great opportunity to connect to a national program. So when you look at, potential guest speakers that are coming from the White House, that are coming from federal agencies to serve on these panels for new leadership, it's a great opportunity for our young people to be a part of that program. So I'm noticing that more people are coming to the trainings. The next thing that I'm noticing is that people are no longer afraid to ask for help. Right. Before it was, I'm interested in running, but who do I go to ask for help? How do I begin to navigate this system? Should I contact this particular elected official, even if, I know I'm not a Democrat, maybe I'm a Republican, should I still reach out and contact that person? You know what, as a school board member, I am a Democrat, but I have Republican women, independents that are contacting me, Democratic women that are contacting me and saying, hey, what did you do to run? How did you come out of that first election cycle? What did you do to build up, your war chest again, to be able to run again? And, and I'm free and open with that information. One thing I tell my young people and tell everybody who asks me for advice, if I'm still a school board member after 16, years, there's a problem. Right? I'm going to be there for a particular period, but then I have to be feeding into the next group of leaders that come behind me. And I have to be willing to pass that torch, to say, here's your opportunity. I've done all that I can do. I need you to carry that baton forward. And so that's the last thing that I'm starting to see. I'm starting to see our older generation understand that we need to share this historical knowledge with young people. We need to give them an opportunity to test the waters. We need to give them opportunities to interact with current policymakers, current stakeholders in our community, so they know how to enter into a room, so they know the conversations to have, so they know how to network, so they feel comfortable when they're in those rooms. When I was in high school, those opportunities were far and few, right? And so when people say, like, how did you know you wanted to be involved in politics? To me, it wasn't politics. It was so foreign to me. My family just, they were union workers, and we just knew you showed up on election day and you voted, right? And you voted in the ways that were going to help your paycheck and help your family, right? But as I've grown older, I understand the importance of networking. I understand the importance of making sure that my mentees are in the room, right? I understand the importance of giving back. And so, I put my money where my mouth is. I used my entire first year school board salary to start a scholarship at the Ohio State University to support students that are active in the community through activism and advocacy. And we're going to give two $2,000 scholarships to students that are Columbus City school grads that are, again, out in these streets, marching, demanding, and calling for change, and, holding me accountable and saying, Dr. Pierce, why are there police in our school, right? What type of contract do we have, and how are we cooperating with the city of Columbus? And so, I'm seeing that hope, that inspiration that's coming from those different activities that are happening right now.
That is really encouraging. And I love that there are more people raising their hands at the early age that you primarily work with to say, I'm going to be a part of this, and that their thinking is so much more integrated. They're not, it's a systems approach just because of what they're able to understand, right? Okay, we are just about out of time. I want to ask one final question that hopefully will leave us with a good inspiration to step out and do something tomorrow about getting involved in politics if we aren't already, all right? So Megan, I'm going to start with you, and I'm going to ask this question of each of you. What was the best piece of advice you received related to your political engagement? And maybe tell us like the position of the person. It was your dad, or it was your first boss.
Oh, just to echo on what Dr. Pierce said, I would say, it's come from my current boss, Senator Rob Portman, who's announced he's not running for re-election. And what he has said it to us through the years but specifically, he always says it at like our Christmas party. And he gives this whole speech about, why we're in public service. And, you're only here for a short period of time. and you do the most work that you can during that time. And I just think that that's the right attitude. I believe public service is a calling. It's a taxing thing to put yourself through. It also, puts you in vulnerable positions. It's hard on your family, and it's a sacrifice. And so I just think looking at that, understanding that, we are all, you can do your personal calling, but you're not out there to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders for the rest of your life. And so I think doing the most that you can during the time that you're there is the best thing that I live my life to, to try to do. And what's next? You figure that out when you get there, but taking it one step at a time and just focusing on what you can do.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And to lean in all the way to the end, right? Because the next
That's right.
find itself. Yeah.
It's only one life and one, and you never know when something will end. I guess just quickly, I mean, you never know when someone's going to lose re-election, when they're going to die, when they're going to retire. And so when you're in these positions where you can influence that, it's great to be able to take advantage of it, and you should do it to the excess as much as you can.
Fantastic. Tina, what's the best piece of political advice anyone's given you?
The best piece of political advice, I think, really came from my grandmother, and it's not really political advice, it's just life advice, and that advice is that you can learn from anybody. And so I'm that person again, that will sit and talk to the kindergartner and kneel down and tie up his shoe and really want to know how was your day at school, or I'm going to go talk to the janitor as well as the principal. I want to know everybody's story, because the more I know their story, the more I'm able to help serve them, right? And so I carry that humble heart with me in all the spaces that I go in, because I can learn from anybody.
Yeah, and I think that's an important balance to the idea that many of us carry about politics being about power, which it is partly about that, right? But you build power by having a constituency that believes in you and that you really come to know, right? Lucy, best piece of political advice.
So mine is from two different people, two different situations that are married into one now. When I first moved to Columbus, the advice that I received when I was looking to get involved and maybe wanted to be more involved in the party, maybe wanted to volunteer for a candidate, was to show up. Just show up, just attend events, be supportive, and don't be afraid to attend something just because you didn't get a personal invite, or if you don't know anybody. I mean, that's when you move to a new city, especially a large city. I'm sure Megan experienced this too. When you move to a new city, you just have to dive right in, right? So show up. But then the piece that I brought with me to Columbus from Toledo, and this is like a motto from a former Lucas County Young Democrats president, is do work. So show up and do work. And so I think for me, I've only been in Columbus for 3 years. I've been the president of the Young Dems for 2 years. I'm in the state organization. I'm in the national organization. I'm in my local party. And I take pride in helping young Democrats run for office in Central Ohio. You have to marry that show up and do work. If you show up and you volunteer, you become a super volunteer. Tina, I know you have people that who were ready to be by your side, whether it was a friend or a sibling or just someone new, who really followed what you were saying and what you wanted to do. You show up and you do the work. And if you do that, I think you stand out. I come from parents who are hardworking folks, like chiropractor and professor at University of Toledo, and then my mother, who is a school board member. And so if you show up and you do hard work and you're kind and respectful, it does go a long way. And so that's the best advice that I've received.
I love that. Yeah. Tiara, that gives you the last word.
And I loved everything, Lucy, Megan, and Dr. Tina. I think I've heard all the same sentiments. And if I was to add anything, It would have to be from, and I think my daughter is just waking up, so this is like perfect timing of ending. But if it was to be anything, I would have to echo the voices of my ancestors who have been the backbone of every major movement, Black women who coined the phrase lift as you climb. And so you can't just think about yourself getting to those spaces. You need to bring other people with you. And then one other person I want to echo, my dear friend Shay, we were having this conversation on the I think it's the sentiment that is raised in a lot of these women's spaces, which is the take up space. And we just talked about the rooting of that. And it's not actually about taking up space. I think that is the issue with leadership. It's about creating space. And I think that ties perfectly in with Lift As You Climb. But as you climb, make sure you're creating space so that people can be a part of that. We don't need to be the voice. We just amplify voices and we pass the mic. Everybody have their own voice and they know the problems of their community. So I'll leave y'all with that.
That means every single one of us can take an action. I have put in the chat, if you want helping to elect women across the state of Ohio to be an action that you take in the morning, that's where you can find the Matriots. I don't know about you, but my notebook is completely full from all of the great advice tonight. And it's been my privilege and extreme pleasure to spend a night of Women's History Month with all of you. Danielle, thank you for hosting us and for putting this together. It's been fun.
Thank you, Shiloh, for doing a fabulous job moderating. I feel like I take notes just from the way that you ask questions all the time as well, but also to all of our panelists and folks that showed up today. I loved our conversation and I really appreciated the threads that we kind of were making throughout the evening about really being that political engagement. My dogs are getting riled up right now, so sorry about that. Political engagement being about public service, right? Being about taking care of yourself and your community and really moving folks forward in that. So sorry for my husky gets mouthy, but I appreciate spending this evening with you all. And if you are looking for more Women's History Month events, we have a full calendar on the Eberly Center website, and I will follow up with everybody with the recording and then also with the contact information that folks have been putting into the chat. So thank you all and have a great evening.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.